Hey everybody, what is up? Welcome back to Final Trade. Today we've got the Tempest era pre-constructed Sliver deck, and man, is this deck terrible. You know, these old pre-constructed decks, they kind of had to conform to the rarity distribution of a regular starter deck, the randomized boxes that you would buy back then. And so they have 3 rares and 8 or 9 uncommons, and then the rest is common and land. And I'm going to show you this deck is just terribly designed, terribly conceived, and it's maybe optimized to be bad. So you remember the slivers that were first introduced in Tempest. Each color got a common sliver that was a 1/1 for 2 mana, and an uncommon sliver that was a 2/2 for 3 mana. And if you looked across those 10 slivers plus the artifact sliver that was introduced, and you said what color has the best slivers, obviously it would be green. It had the muscle sliver with +1/+1, and it had the horn sliver that gave trample. And number 2 would kind of be a toss up between blue or white. White had the first strike sliver, and blue has the winged sliver that allows flying. And then, kind of at a distant third is red with the heart sliver that gives unaffected by summoning sickness. But what you've got here is maybe the 2 worst colors. Black is definitely the worst color for slivers in Tempest. And blue, the winged sliver is good, but the mnemonic sliver is terrible. And so this deck, first of all, 4 winged slivers, and I have to be fair, this is a good choice. Winged and flight is definitely a good thing to put on your slivers, but the rest of these slivers are terrible. So it ends with the winged sliver. The mnemonic sliver, sacrifice and pay 2 mana to draw a card. Okay, well, my only creatures in this deck are slivers. I really don't have that many. There's 16, and their abilities aren't that great. And so you're going to sacrifice it to draw a card. And keep in mind, when you sacrifice it, you lose this card, the sliver that you're sacrificing, to draw a card. So you're paying 2 mana for no card advantage. Now, the next one, this was the common black sliver, regenerate. That's an okay ability. There were better though. Like I said, the muscle sliver, the trampling green sliver, and the first strike white sliver. And then this is just horrible. Pay 2, sacrifice the creature, and make an opponent discard a card. And so, card advantage wise, it's equal because you lose the sliver card and your opponent loses a card at random from their hand, and you have to pay 2 mana for that. So it's pretty bad. Metallic sliver was just basically what would eventually become a sliver token, a 1/1 for 1 mana that brings no abilities of its own but just inherits. And so the mix of slivers in this deck is about the worst that you could pick from what was available of the 11 slivers in Tempest. So next, the deck kind of redeems itself. It has six counterspells in it. So 2 copies of just the classic counterspell, 2 power sinks, a spell blast, and a dismiss. And the neat thing about this is that these decks were squarely aimed at new players and casual players. And to give this many counterspells and kind of add a control element to the deck really showed a lot of faith that WotC had in new players to kind of grasp these concepts of how to effectively use a counterspell and to use 4 different variants of the same type of effect. So I think this was well chosen. Next, a couple more instants. Whispers of the Muse, a great card in the Tempest era, and definitely a good addition to the deck. Airtie's Meddling, this is just not that good. It delays a spell from resolving, and this is one of the 3 rares in this deck. So, your potentially most powerful cards, one of them is wasted here on... Really, I would have rather had another just straight counterspell. Instead of paying more mana to delay something from resolving, I'd rather just counter it outright. And I don't think there's a lot of opportunity in this deck for you to use Airtie's Meddling in some creative way on your own spell to delay it. So the black instants in the deck, I'll say these are pretty well chosen. It's 4 creature removal cards, so Diabolic Edict and Dark Banishing. I think these are fine. The sorceries, we got 2 copies of Dream Cache, which is a good card. lets you kind of search the top cards of your library a little bit and get rid of some of the stuff you may not need right now. Evankar's Justice. This is just another terrible card, and it's one of the uncommons that's in this deck. So you lose an uncommon slot to this, and look back at all your slivers. What are their toughnesses? It's all 1 and 2. So they give you a card that will basically kill every creature you have in your deck. Why would they do this? Extinction. This is the second of the rares in this deck. And this does not play well against the other pre-constructed decks. This is the only of the 4 Tempest pre-constructed decks that has a large concentration of creatures who share one type. And this is aimed against creatures who share one type. So to waste one of the 3 rare slots in this deck on this card is just ridiculous. It's an awful choice. And Lobotomy. I've always liked Lobotomy. It's one of those cards that kind of excites you, and you always want to see a deck where it really works out nicely. I never have, but it's a cool, fun card, and I think this is a good addition because for a new player, you kind of show them things like searching your opponent's hand, searching your opponent's library, removing things from the game, and it's a multicolored card. I think this is a good choice just to kind of expose a new player to a lot of different concepts in the game. Now, Fevered Convulsions. This is a rare, and it's pretty bad. I guess if you make it far enough in the game, you can just start handing out -1/-1 counters to stuff, but boy, there are a lot better cards that could have been chosen instead of this. Essence Bottle. This is one of your 8 or 9 uncommons, and truly a terrible choice. Just won't really gain you enough life to do anything. Really bad. And these awful, slow allied dual lands that were in Tempest. Just unnecessary and wastes another uncommon slot. So, all around, this was really a terribly designed deck. If they wanted to put a sliver pre-constructed deck into Tempest, it should have been probably green-white, maybe splash the blue in, but they might think that's too strong. Maybe do enemy colors, make it green-blue. Maybe make it green-red, but that's kind of weak, but not nearly so weak as blue-black. So, man, I think this is certainly going to be the worst performing of the 4 decks as I play them, and we'll see. So, if you like these old decks, you're excited to see random 24-year-old decks in action, like, comment, share, and subscribe. Join me on Final Trade, and I'd love to have you. Thanks a lot.